3, 2, 1.
Here we go! What is up, fellow movers, and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll have another tutorial. We will be speaking about the handstand push-up again, but this time we will be focusing on mistakes that I see a lot of people do when they're training the handstand. And this might be the reason why you're not able to learn the handstand push-up. Now, before we get started, let's just take a moment and talk about form. Now, there is a lot of form talk out there, and a lot of people are claiming that there are only one way to do the handstand push-up correctly. And for a lot of people, this is what they call the strict handstand push-up, where your body is hollow and straight, and your head is going very far in front of your hands. And why is it that this is the correct way of doing the handstand push-up? It's definitely not the easiest way of doing the handstand push-up, and I would rather call this a progression after the handstand push-up. For me, the handstand push-up is simple. You stand on your hands, you get your head to the ground, and you get up again. That's a handstand push-up. And I guess a lot of the movement or bodyweight gurus out there would turn in their grave and scream, but we're all entitled to our own opinions, and in my opinion, form has 4 different functions. The most important function is preventing injury. The next function is to make the exercise look cooler or prettier or better. It's basically aesthetics. Third reason is efficiency. It makes a move more efficient or easier, which in many cases is important. And the fourth function is making an exercise or a drill or a move harder. Why would you want to do this? Well, obviously when you're strength training and using bodyweight exercises to train strength, you want to make them harder once you're able to do them, so that you can further progress strength-wise. Now, let's look at the handstand push-up, and in particular the so-called strict handstand push-up, and let's see what of these functions this strict handstand push-up serves. Now, regarding injury prevention and efficiency, what I usually promote with a handstand push-up is twisting your elbows in and going slightly forward with your head down to a stable triangle of support, so down to a headstand position basically, before you go up again. This will both make it easier balance-wise, because you are in a much more stable position, and by tucking in your elbows and not turning them outwards, you will also make sure that you do not enter a not beneficial position in terms of shoulder rotation. So these are the main 2 cues you should follow for handstand push-up in order to make it as simple as possible and in order to keep you from injuring yourself. But it doesn't have to be like this. I mean, as long as you are strong in a position, and we talked about form also being a means to make an exercise harder, and you can do a handstand push-up in many different ways. Let's just look at, for example, a hollow back handstand push-up. It's definitely a hard move. It's not something I would train, but it's definitely a cool skill, and I've been fiddling around with it. In this particular skill, you turn your elbows outwards and you put your head straight in between your hands, so it's the straight opposite. Now, this is definitely a kind of handstand push-up. It's definitely not the easiest way, but it looks pretty cool. So in this sense, the form of the hollow back handstand push-up would be about making the exercise harder. So for all different kinds of exercises, you can do them in many different ways, and as long as you are strong enough to hold a position, you should be good. So let's move on to the different common mistakes I see when people are practicing handstand push-ups. So number 1, they're not strong enough. And it's pretty obvious, but maybe not so much after all, because in some way it makes sense that if you can do a wall-assisted handstand push-up and if you can do a handstand, you should be able to do a handstand push-up. But the thing is, because the handstand push-up is such a technical exercise as well, you use a lot of power and you exhaust yourself because of the technical aspects and the balance involved in the exercise. So usually you would need somewhere between 5 and 10 wall-assisted handstand push-up before you could expect to be able to do a freestanding handstand push-up. The next reason is quite obvious as well. You can't handstand. If you can't handstand, how can you expect to be able to do a handstand push-up? Now, you could obviously be lucky and kick up to an unstable handstand and immediately go down to a headstand and push yourself up before losing balance. But I would generally recommend having a pretty stable handstand when you're pursuing the handstand push-up. And because the handstand push-up itself is quite technical and requires a lot of specific technique, it's usually not enough just being able to hold a handstand for a few seconds. You really need to be able to control it so that you can think about all of the technical aspects of the handstand push-up without needing to worry about the balance in your handstand. The third very common mistake that we have already been discussing is that you're a form geek. So some guy or some girl convinced you that there is only one way to perform a handstand push-up, and that's what you're pursuing. You have this picture that your first handstand push-up is going to be a strict handstand push-up, and if that's the case, it's going to take you a lot longer to learn it. So I suggest don't worry about it too much, just worry about doing the handstand push-up first, and then you can make it better, make it cooler, make it harder, do whatever you want with it. But first, just learn it, okay? The fourth very common mistake I see is that people only do wall-assisted handstand push-ups facing the wall. Because I know that there is a lot of people out there claiming that this is the best way of approaching the handstand push-up. And it is definitely a very good way and a very helpful drill. But I think that the wall-assisted handstand push-up with your back against the wall can be equally as good. In fact, even a bit better in terms of practicing the technical aspect of the handstand push-up. Because it's slightly easier, you get an arch in your back, but I think that's totally fine in the beginning, because when you arch your back, you push out your chest and you get to involve your upper pecs a lot more compared to a strict handstand push-up where you are much more reliant on pure shoulder strength. And in addition to this, when you're doing only these facing the wall handstand push-up, you always get help from the same direction all the time, so you get reliant on getting help from the wall in the same direction. And what this usually results in is that when you're pushing, either when you're going down in the negative or pushing up again, you fall down on your feet because you're not used to the balance point of the handstand push-up. So definitely use the facing the wall handstand push-up progression, but also use the back against the wall handstand push-up progression because they complement each other very nicely. The fifth mistake I very often see when people are training for the handstand push-up is that they are not training the technique. They do not introduce technical drills. They think that getting strong using wall-assisted handstand push-ups and knowing how to do a handstand will magically merge into a handstand push-up. And while this could be true if you practice a lot and give it a lot of attempts in the long run, a much more efficient way of approaching it is to actually introduce technical drills, because the handstand push-up is by nature a technical drill in addition to being super heavy. And there are a ton of different drills in different progressions that you could use, suitable for many different levels, that will teach you sort of the balance through the range of motion that you need and the technique you're using when you're pushing in a handstand push-up. So examples of this are the crow push-up, or from a crow you push up to a handstand and down back again. You can do bent arm presses with different depths, or you could do just these exercises in their negative form. So from a handstand you negatively bent arm press, or from a handstand you try and controlledly go down to a crow position. And exercises such as this will help you realize how you're keeping the balance and keeping a balanced position through the whole range of motion. And this is very important to also do stepwise if you want to learn the handstand push-up in the most efficient way possible. So you could of course just get super strong by doing wall-assisted handstand push-ups. You could get a very stable handstand, and then you can just try to do handstand push-ups until you make it. And this will definitely get you there at some point, but I think by approaching the technique of the handstand push-up in a stepwise manner will get you there a lot faster. Before you run away to another YouTube video, I just want to mention that I have a handstand push-up workout in my app that will approach the handstand push-up from 3 different directions, namely the technical aspect, from building up a strong facing the wall handstand push-up and a strong back against the wall handstand push-up. So you can check that out if you want to check out for yourself how I would approach and program this awesome skill. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment and like the video if you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe, and see you guys next time.